Hey there, traders. Christian from Tribeca Trade Group with your end of day recap from Monday the 17th. And want to move back after a 3 day weekend. And, there was a lot of uncertainty last week. There was a lot of negatives, I would say, last week. The geopolitical things, geopolitical headlines, just a lot of other areas of the market looked pretty ugly going into the weekend. That typically can happen when the market could be expecting something for the weekend. I think there was North Korean missile tests that the headlines were focused on last week. So no one really wanted to hold a lot of risk, and I think it was basically a buyer's strike going into the end of last week. I certainly didn't want to own a lot of risk going into the week, and I think that was the general thought going into the long weekend. So what happened over the weekend? Nothing. Futures opened up and we were down, I think, about 20 basis points. Gold was up about a 0.5%, close to a 0.5%. Bonds were up. And you kind of had a feeling that all those moves were going to be faded last night. Sometimes when that happens, after a long weekend and we open up that way and there's really no news to cause a sustained rally in bonds or gold, sometimes those things. I figured that they would come off today. They ended up down on the day. Gold ended up down 30 basis points. So when you look at bottom or top to bottom, it was about an 80 basis point move from where they opened. And TLT bonds were also down 30 basis points. So, just going back to what I said about a buyer's strike, I certainly didn't see that. I certainly saw that last week in ETFs. I've talked about before, equity ETFs usually average about anywhere from, like, I'd say $2 to $4 billion in inflows a day. I think for all of last week and really for the last 2 weeks, there really hasn't been any inflows. I think it was just about flat last week for U.S. and international ETFs saw inflows last week, but for the U.S. there just really hasn't been going on. Just hasn't been a lot of buying going on, and I think that there was several reasons for that. So I'm not going to go into that right now because we've talked about that plenty, and I want to go into today's activity. So just looking at the S&P, we got a nice bullish engulfing candle, and I would say this is probably one of the best scenarios that you can expect to have. The only thing, if you really want to be pessimistic, you could say that today there wasn't a lot of volume, and you could say that we didn't get back above the 50-day moving average, which is this line that I've got drawn right here. But other than that, if you looked at where we started, these days where we kind of start below value on all time frames, it's a lot of work. I think it's to see us come all the way back. Sorry, I'm having some trouble with my charts. So this is where we started the day. We talked about how futures were down. We started to get going right around 8 o'clock in the morning. Keep in mind Europe was closed today, so we weren't really taking many cues off of Europe pre-market. Around 4 o'clock in the morning is usually when Europe opens, but they weren't open, so we really didn't do much up until 8 o'clock in the morning. So we did get step one. We got into value. We actually went all the way across today's value area. Really nice. Looks like we're going to start tomorrow above value. I like that setup for tomorrow. Looking at the hourly chart as well, I was actually thinking that we were going to have a really tough time getting into value for the week. When you start below value, usually you could see all these long wicks on these candles because usually it takes a little bit of, it looks like it took basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours for us to get into value. And then once we do it, sometimes we jump right through. So really good. This was a great candle at 3 o'clock today. Once we finally got into value, we took off. So I saw a lot of buying in financials. XLF was up really nice today. So, if you remember on Friday, I mean, obviously we've got some big earnings that are coming out tomorrow, but if you remember on Friday, or was it Thursday? Thursday, excuse me. Yeah, Thursday. I'm getting my days confused. But I'll just say it like this: towards the end of the week, J.P. Morgan reported Citigroup. They had good earnings, and the stocks fell. Financials got sold off pretty hard. So, when you have good earnings, sometimes it does take a little bit of a time for the market to kind of realize that. And again, I think there was very skittish weekends in the market last week in terms of holding positions, and so financials really got that boost right around that 3 o'clock time frame. Really nice move by XLF. You did see there was a 2 million share block that went up, which I'm assuming is buying. I'm not sure what that is right there, but I think maybe a little bit of buying going into tomorrow. You have BAC that's reporting earnings tomorrow. Bank of America, Goldman Sachs reporting, Regions Financials reporting. I don't think anybody really wants to be short financials after they've had the move that they've had over the last month. Look at all the calls that went up on the April 23s. They started buying these today at 10 cents. And then all the way to about like 23, 24 cents. So this went up this morning just for 10 cents alone, 42,000 BAC. So once you start to see financials rally like that, we started to see all those areas of the market that were really weak last week outperform today. So, I think that's as much as you want to ask for in one day's trading. You had transports, IYT, which started to really break down last week. They were up well over 1%. So that's a good thing. You have, and we'll just kind of look at these charts just to see how they landed. So, I don't think the fight is done here, especially we're still underneath the 50-day moving average. But, you take it a day at a time. And the fact that, number one, A, we didn't go lower. B, we held in, and other than what we've seen the last couple of weeks, is we haven't been able to sustain a bid in the market. So really great to see us close on the highs as well. Small caps, another one that's been a problem area, finished up 1.2%. We talked about financials. There was a couple other problem areas too, which I can't think of right now. Semis, they finished up 1.1%. So still, it's only one day, and it's good to see that. It's good to see that we closed on the highs, and some of the areas that really got beaten up last week rebounded. Besides financials, one of the areas that's been really super strong is the home builders. These look like they might be poised to take out the highs. We do have some home building data out tomorrow. We saw a nice call buyer of Toll Brothers, which tells me somebody's looking for a bullish print tomorrow. But we do have tomorrow. We have the housing starts, and we've got building permits tomorrow at 8:30. So we'll see. That could cause a little bit of volatility if it happens to be weak. The data that came in today, by the way, was not stellar by any means. The housing market index was fine. Was a little bit shy of expectations. The Empire Manufacturing, which this number does jump around month to month, but was pretty big miss in terms of that. So not everything went great today. What I also found interesting was they talked about Steve Mnuchin was saying that there's possibility that the tax plan will get further delayed, and the market rallied on that. So why is that important, or why is that notable or interesting? Because people have been talking about that's been weighing on the market. Once the bad news comes out and the market rallies, that tells me it's already priced in. So that's a good thing. If the risk is to the upside now, that anything that in this agenda that could come out, if it actually happens, the market has a possibility to rally off of that now, because it's, I think, one of those things, and one of the reasons why we were weak last week, which you could take your pick, is because of that agenda continuing to be pushed out. So if the market is no longer pricing that in, that's also, I think, a positive. So home builders strong today. All the FANG stocks were super strong today. They came back nicely today. Amazon, just amazing again, moving right up and found support right where it needed to. So nice looking candle. Just a little bit weak last week after a big move up. And, sometimes you see this. You see a nice move up and a third retracement, and now it looks like it's poised to kind of head back to that direction. Again, a great looking bar. We'll talk a little bit about Netflix. They reported, this was a little bit difficult today because, possibly a little bit of short covering going into the earnings print. But when a name is up $4 or 3% on a day of earnings, it's really tough to play a long earnings trade. So I actually didn't trade anything here. And it looks like it's really not doing. It's actually up now $1. So their earnings call, I think, starts about in an hour. So other than that, I just see a lot of green on my screen. You could kind of pick your sector. Industrials were also strong, and the gold miners were weak. So we mentioned as well towards the end of last week why I really didn't get long gold. It just didn't look convincing enough to me. I didn't see the gold miners really leg up, and they did outperform last week. But when gold really started to move north, gold miners were not following, and it just didn't. Something didn't feel right to me. Same thing with the move in bonds as well. So we'll leave it there for the day. We got a lot of earnings tomorrow. UNH also reports tomorrow. Besides all the bank earnings, J&J's also out. So we got a whole bunch. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I think it was just one day, but definitely a really nice big step in the right direction. So thanks for watching tonight's video, and have a great evening.